Ever since Redfin and Zillow were founded in 2004 and 6 respectively, their goal has been to disrupt the real estate industry, which is another way of saying destroy the competition, at the same time building their wealth while paying little or no federal income taxes. And while they seek to destroy the business of every real estate agent in America, typically we're small businesses that contribute to our communities as well as we got to pay our taxes, unfortunately. They're building wealth and paying no taxes. How does that really work? We're going to get a look inside the power of monopolies today. Zillow and another company aspiring to be the next Zillow. I'm Bill Gross, and this is my real estate market update. I do this every week. Now, before we get into the big picture, let's get down to where we are in the marketplace and take a look at the market stats that tell us where we are today. Today, or any time in an economy, there's two parts to it. There's the demand and supply. Demand would be pushed by interest rates in real estate and supply by inventory. Interest rates in America have been dropping a bit actually over the last few weeks from a high of 7.05%, closing last week to 6.74%, down about 0.25% in that time period, and a few weeks in a row on the downside. Now, is this a long-term trend? There's no way to know. But certainly the rates are in the middle of where they've been for the last year. They're certainly in a range that are sufficient for buyers to have lots of activity. And if the economy is solid, there's no reason not to expect continued increase in buying of houses. Now, on the inventory side, we're still at an all-time low other than during the pandemic period. You take a look at where we are. Traditionally, the market is at its low in January, February. It starts to rise up again in March in the spring season. This is the number of homes on the market. And today we have about just slightly over 1 million houses available for sale. Now, pre-pandemic in February, we'd have 1.285 million. So we're still below a normal market by 25% of homes for sale. And so as long as that's true, one thing is true, housing prices can't crash down, barring some major economic activity. So overall, the housing market is poised with buyers being able to buy houses and a shortage of inventory. Buyers are going to be looking to bid up houses and push sellers to make moves. And so we have kind of the beginnings of what could be a housing recovery. But overall, certainly housing prices are nowhere near a crash or any kind of set for any kind of downturn. Now, specifically in Los Angeles, real estate is very local. We're in a market now that's actually turned around and has gone from us, is now slightly out of the slight seller's advantage. The market post-COVID had gone, and this is Altos Research, they take all the factors and give an overall number to it. And the market had gone down to about a 35, which is almost an equal market between buyers and sellers. And the last few months has moved up to 38 on their numbers. And you can see the median list prices are rising, the price of new houses is rising, the price per square foot is rising. Obviously, we took 13,000 homes out of inventory, and you have a number of those homeowners looking to buy, you're gonna have more demand than we've had before. So overall, the market in Los Angeles is still pretty solid. Now, it might not be good for buyers because lack of inventory and more demand means prices are gonna be under pressure. So it's a seller's market. It appears to be increasingly so going forward. Okay, so let's talk about the monopoly that is Zillow and Redfin. In the news, and I think I reported this previously, this is from GeekWire, that Zillow and Redfin have a partnership. Partnership sounds so nice, so friendly. They could bring the rivals closer together. It sounds like, I don't know, to me it sounds like Stalin and Hitler in World War II, pre-America getting involved in the World War. I mean, what could be bad about the two largest internet sites that are both worth billions of dollars, that pay virtually no federal tax dollars at all, them getting better together to work together? I don't know. Let's take a look at this one a little more closely. This is related to rentals, not housing. Now, I think the way I would say this is Zillow and Redfin have disrupted, i.e. made worse, the housing market as much as they can, and now they're focused on rentals. And so in this deal, it sounds great. It sounds like they're going to work together. What does it really mean? Basically, if you read this, Zillow's paying Redfin $100 million up front as a licensing fee so that Redfin will only show listings from Zillow. Now, why would they do that? Well, of course, Zillow charges rentals. They charge money to landlords who want to rent the properties. They charge leads to agents who want to buy these. They have other advertising as well. So think about it. The economy, the marketplace went from 2 competitors down to 1, but the one's going to pay the other $100 million just to go away. Well, why is that? Because Zillow believes by paying Redfin $100 million, they can make, I don't know, $125 million more by charging more in fees or charging more on to advertisers, or restricting the leads to certain, I guess, renters who are going to pay a premium for some sort of a program. So I'm not sure how it all works out, but Zillow is not investing $100 million to make the market better for renters. They're not making it better for landlords. They're paying Redfin $100 million basically just to go away and get out of the marketplace, which obviously can't be good for consumers. And I thought it was really interesting when you read the article, just to show how despicable this is, how the news carries it. Now, this is a tech organization, GeekWire. Internet companies have always been about international globalist investors basically destroying American businesses for their own personal benefit and gain financially. And you can see how it is in this article, where they mention, well, what happens to the Redfin employees? Well, there's 450 being laid off or let go. And so look at how they describe that. Redfin, which parenthetically is laying off 450 employers as part of the deal, will get additional revenue from the leads. So basically what it's saying is Redfin gets paid money to axe 450 of their loyal employees. And then the next line is, we're excited about the partnership with Redfin, says Zillow's CEO. Well, of course he is. He just paid off his #1 competitor in this niche field to go away. And in his mind, he'll make a profit by destroying the competition. Literally, in this case, by destroying a department at Redfin that was competing with him. Of course he's excited. He can get away with that. There was a time when we had an antitrust division that would look at that and say, well, that's obviously anti-competitive. That does nothing to improve the marketplace. You're not investing in better technology. You're not giving anything to the consumer, the landlord, or the renter. All you're doing is paying people to go away. And it's like, I don't know how to describe how wrong that is. Is it just me? What do you think? Put your comments in. I read that, and it was just so parenthetical how I just read through that, wow. And I thought, all week this week in the news, you've seen a parade of federal government bureaucrats. Now, for my money, they don't do much for us for the most part. I mean, yes, there are firefighters and policemen. They're not being laid off. But the people being laid off, for the most part, are doing jobs that nobody needs or is going to miss, and certainly isn't worth my tax dollars and your tax dollars to pay for their jobs. But here you have 450 people who are just being paid off for no other reason. Being let go for no other reason than their competition. That the bully, Zillow, has enough money. They're worth $17 billion. They have how much? I had to list here. $1.9 billion of cash investments. So instead of $2 billion, they have $1.9 billion, and they just pay $100 million, and Redfin just goes away in that little field of competition called rentals. Unbelievable. I don't understand why people aren't more upset about that. Now, to show how common this is in the investment world, there's another company that's aspiring to do the same thing. Really, the darling of real estate agencies in Wall Street is Compass. It's a company that, again, has never made a profit, but they are the darling of Wall Street for whatever reasons, and become one of the largest, if not the largest, residential real estate company in America by number of transactions. And frankly, I have a lot of friends there, and they're a good company for those agents. But as a company, they're not making any money. They're not paying any taxes. And their whole strategy now is really also anti-competitive. Take a look at this. This is Mike Doprat, professor of real estate in Colorado, fantastic source of information. And he calls this exclusive inventory power play, how Compass has increased their private exclusives from 2,400 to 6,300 properties. So they basically double, tripled the number of homes that people list with them to sell. Now think about when you list a house, in my experience, every seller wants top dollar. And Compass is saying to them, the best way to get top dollar is not for me not to tell all the other agents in town about your property. I'm only going to tell Compass agents. And while Compass is a good company, a big company, I don't think they're more than 5% of the market in any city. So how could it possibly be better? And I get if there's a certain security issue, but generally, in my experience, celebrities and those people, they're not living in the house when it's being sold. So really, being off market or not talking about it isn't really such a big deal. Or they hold in LLCs. There's other ways that they can keep their anonymity. But how possibly, and I've listened to agents tell me this, certainly works for the agent, because if you list your house with me, I can go around and try to pre-sell it. But the thing is, buyers who want my off-market listings, they don't call me and say, hey, Bill, what off-market listings you have that are in the market that I can pay fair market value for? They ask me what off-market listings you have that I can get that's a good deal. Meaning every buyer of these off-market properties thinks because they're buying it, they're paying a lower price. Now what happens here is, it's really brutal, is many times these listing agents put the house in the market and all they're doing is showing them to the larger market. Buyers who might be clients of other agents because of the lack of inventory will call the listing agent on these properties and then they get pulled over by this exclusive process. And so what really this does is, this is a way for Compass to, I think, use the upcoming listing to get more buyers, not to sell the house at a higher price. And I think a business move has to have one North Star. When a seller asks me to sell their house, they want the best execution at the best price. They don't want me to use their listing for me to get more business. They don't want me to use their listing just to double in the deal. They want me to get the best price. But here, Compass, their strategy, their competitive advantage, their big push, their specialization is their private exclusive, another fancy term for pocket listings, another way of saying being greedy to try to double dip. How does that work better for the customer? I get it works good for Compass. I get it works good for their agents. But the question I would always ask is, how does that work best for the customer? I think that the answer is, at the end of the day, it really doesn't. And I don't think anybody cares. I think everybody's so greedy in this business at times. They focus on the profit rather than knowing if you take care of customers, profits will follow. Speaking of greed, locally here in Los Angeles, the homelessness industry I've talked about for years, last week got a little more detail on this lady. Our top homelessness official, Valisha Adams Kellum, seems like the more names you have, the more likely you are to be on the wrong side of the news these days in terms of government graft. This is a lady who has a salary of $430,000 a year. That's not enough. She has to give a contract for LA homelessness to a company where her husband's a senior leader of $2.1 million. We call that double dipping. In most businesses, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. But in government, that's how things are done because the business that got the contract is a nonprofit. Now, these days, nonprofits most commonly stand for a money laundering scheme gimmick because they don't make a profit. They only make money by money laundering government kickbacks and contracts. And here's a case where here's a lady, again, homeless people. We have literally people living in tents on our streets. The number's increasing beyond belief. We spent $28 billion in our state. This lady is paid $430,000 a year, and her best solution is to pay a company where her husband happens to be in senior leadership $2.1 million a year. That's Los Angeles. That's your tax dollars attempting to solve the homelessness problem. Now, on the flip side, when the government tries to cut expenses, look how the press covers it. This one is really particularly aggravating. The Associated Press, which Elon Musk calls associate propaganda, says the Trump administration to slash funding for enforcement of fair housing laws. Now, slash funding for enforcement of fair housing laws. I don't think anybody has asked to slash funding for enforcement of housing laws. The proposal is to slash funding for the non-enforcement of fair housing laws, to slash money for not doing their job, but doing other things. I find it curious, this picture. This is the incoming or the new housing urban development leader, Scott Turner. Does this picture is it because he looks sinister, because he looks evil, because he's slashing enforcement? I don't quite understand. His picture is being used regularly, I guess, as an attempt to demonize him. But the thing that I find fascinating is nowhere does the AP even pretend to say that housing and urban development has been effective in enforcing housing laws, meaning if in fact they were doing a good job, nobody would want to cut the funding. The only reason they're being cut is because they're not doing their job. And the proof is this. You have Democrats running for office today saying that racism is worse than ever in America, demanding reparations, demanding more enforcement of laws, and yet housing urban development has been on for 60 years. So in 60 years, we've spent billions and billions of dollars, and according to Democrats, the fair housing situation has gotten worse, not better. So I think it cries out for, well, how can we find a more effective way to enforce these laws? Maybe the answer is not to do it from Washington, D.C. Maybe the answer is to let states do it. Maybe California does a better job. Maybe individual states have a better solution. But what's clearly true is the money being spent in Washington, D.C. is being wasted in huge amounts. I think all of us see that this week. I think the disclosures of where your tax dollars are going has just been really eye-opening to most people. Okay, another piece of the news is, and this is going to be, I think, another push by the press and by the government advocates, the statists, the globalists, is demonizing elderly people living in their own houses. And it's very subtle. Seniors aging in place own a growing share of U.S. housing. And here's an article talking about how bad that is because people over 65, hey, I'm over 65, live in houses with two or more spare bedrooms. Hey, I have a house with 2 spare bedrooms. Now, one I use for my office, and one we use as a guest room for friends and a nursery for my grandkids. So somehow this article is saying that I'm wrong for having a house that I work out of and have my grandkids stay in. I'm not going along with that. You can see the number of people who have such situations has tripled. And I think it's because America is aging as a population. We have less young people being born and more people who've been here a longer period of time. And so I do notice in my neighborhood how many people have houses where there's one elderly person, maybe a surviving spouse, in a couple cases that come to mind. And those houses would be snapped up by first-time buyers starting families. And that's a challenge, but it's only a challenge because we're not building housing that other people can buy. So rather than demonize seniors like me, please, I love my house. I love having an office in my house. I love having my grandkids stay. They stayed over Friday night. My 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old, it was a blast. My wife and I had a great time. I don't want to be forced out of my house because we're not building enough housing. Let's build more houses so we all can have the house we want to live in and we can stay there as long as we want. And let's not demonize any particular group. Okay, so that's what I have for this week. What are your thoughts? Please like, subscribe, put your comments in, text, email me if I can help in any way. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.